This is Surfing Through Cinema. I'm your host, Hawaii Harry. Today I'll be discussing the next film and first film for James Bond Week. Starring Sean Connery and Ursula Andress, this episode is all about Dr. No from 1962. So the way we're going to do this, rather than do a whole synopsis on the whole plot, I'll talk about what I liked and didn't like about it, and then get into other items that I feel are more important to discuss with these movies, because I just feel in general James Bond is not really meant to be taken super seriously, and so the plot itself most of the time will not make any sense and really be consequential. So I'll be talking about what I liked and what I didn't like, talking about the opening intro song, the villain, the Bond girl, and James Bond himself. So without further ado, I'll get into what I liked and what I didn't like. What I liked, I really liked the setting of Jamaica. I think that's perfect for a James Bond film. And Sean Connery, he carries the film. I think this is a great intro for him. And then what I didn't like about the plot, it was very slow and hard to follow. The villain's motives were very hard to follow. They didn't really make any sense and didn't feel really dangerous either. It was chemical agent and whatnot he was going to blast in the air, but still, I was like, okay. It didn't feel, really dangerous. There was no real danger to it. But yeah, because of that, it's really hard to follow and definitely dated in the sense of it's not a super fast-paced action film like you'd normally see in the 80s or 90s. So yeah, that's what I liked and didn't like about the plot. So now I'll get into the opening song. Well, now this being the first film, they hadn't established that as a trait yet, and so there wasn't really one. Not in the sense of Skyfall or GoldenEye or Goldfinger, the really popular ones. It's nothing like that. It's just a myriad of text and shapes just moving around. You hear them say Dr. No and all of that, which is interesting, but it's nothing like even Casino Royale's intro is an amazing, probably one of the better ones. This one, it was just okay. And then it really weirdly cuts to three guys kind of crouched over with canes and then starts singing Three Blind Mice. And then it cuts to Jamaica and shows these three guys. So I guess they were trying to use that as a segue to get into the film. I don't really know what they were thinking, but it was really weird. And I think this is terrible. Now, considering how they didn't have that established yet, I won't be as harsh as I probably will with other ones, but this is definitely one of the worst ones. I think if I were to rate it out of 10, I'd give it like a 2 or a 3. This was really bad. Really just average and kind of boring. Alright, now the villain. So, I think in order to have a really good James Bond film, you need to have a good villain who has clear motives, who brings real danger, and kind of hard to figure out how James Bond's going to win, the audience shouldn't be able to say, oh, well, he'll just do this and this. There should be some real worry in that he would win or, deep down we all know he won't win, but there should be some real conflict. And this one I thought was very, very weak. His motives were not super clear, and they were kind of lame. What Dr. No's trying to do is he's trying to use a radio signal to disrupt the Mercury program for NASA, and which is pretty scary, I guess, but there's just something about him where he wasn't that menacing and that scary of a villain. And he died really easily. All James Bond had to do was kick him into some acid, literally 20 seconds after they started fighting, really. And then he dies. Oh, okay. There was no real chemistry between him and Bond. There was no real conflict. He was just a very weak villain. Definitely a throwaway villain. So yeah, if I were to rate it out of 10, I'd also give it a 3. Okay, now the Bond girl. Was she a good actress and did she have good chemistry? That's how I'm kind of rating this. In this one, there were a couple of Bond girls, but the main one is the one played by Ursula Andress, called Honey Rider. The names they have for these characters, I swear. To be honest and very blunt, she is not a good actress. She's like, oh no, what are we gonna do? Like, I think the real reason why they picked her was for her looks, not because she would have good chemistry with James Bond. So yeah, she feels more like a fling than she does a real romantic interest for Bond. She doesn't really offer anything to the table, so she's kind of useless, really. Now, there's nothing wrong with the damsel in distress trope. That's a real thing, but yeah, she didn't feel like anything really. I mean, she had a knife, but we never see her use it. I'd give her a 4 out of 10. She was kind of weak as a character, and there was no real chemistry between them. Alright, now the last point, James Bond himself. Was this a good example of James Bond or a bad example of James Bond? I think this was a great example of James Bond. He's definitely believable as a killer, but also believable as a womanizer. I think he was perfect for the role, and this is a great start for him. Even the very first scene, we see him sitting at a poker table, and they ask him, what's your name? He says, Bond, James. That's what sold it for me. I think he's definitely the best part of the movie. And the only reason why I would recommend watching this one is if, like me, you're trying to watch all the James Bond films. But if you're just a casual movie watcher, I don't think this would be a good one to start with. I think this would be one to watch eventually. So overall, I thought it was a weak film, not the greatest, and sadly, I'm a little surprised that they're able to keep going with the series after this one. It's not that interesting. The villain's weak. The opening title is kind of weird, kind of lame. But Bond himself was great, and that's probably why it did so well, is because of Sean Connery. He's definitely a great actor. Alright, well those are my thoughts and feelings on Dr. No. Next time, I'll be discussing the next film for Disney Week. This being the last film that Walt Disney actually worked on, I'm of course talking about The Jungle Book from 1967. Alright, well until next time, this has been Surfing Through Cinema with Hawaii Harry. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Surfing Through Cinema. Make sure to check us out on Facebook at Surfing Through Cinema with Hawaii Harry and on Instagram with Surfing Through Cinema. We also have a website, www.anchor.fm/Surfing Through Cinema, where you can learn more details on upcoming episodes and on past episodes.